Welcome to our professional development session for today. This is actually the last one for this semester. Consequently, it is a reflection on the semester and how we think about reflection in a metacognitive manner for ourselves as well as for our students. Joining us today as our host is Daniel. So if there's any questions or comments, if you'll post them in the on the chat screen, he will take care of responding for you. This is, let me move this out of the way for you. This is what all we're covering in today's session. However, know that I'm going to take it individually, piece by piece for you, but we will get to all of these things throughout the session. So I chose Flipgrid as one of the ways of responding and of posting. For one thing, I love using Flipgrid. It is an absolutely amazing tool, and I'm always trying to share it with anybody that I can. But there's another reason, too. One of the research articles I found indicated that in many cases, an audio reflection assignment can really help focus students on the metacognitive skills, help them develop those metacognitive skills. For many students, an audio response, which is what Flipgrid is. It's a place where you can go and have your students record responses and then respond to each other. And in this way, they can not only see their colleagues, but they can also hear and get a feeling of the personality that it comes through as they are recorded. And for many students, this is much easier than trying to write something down. For one thing, it's quick. It's a quick, accessible tool for them. And if they get used to reflecting in an audio way, it helps them with their metacognitive processing. Also, it's a benefit for students who may have language challenges, because they can speak and say what's on their mind without worrying about the syntax or the spelling or getting all of those things down correctly, the vocabulary or any of that. And so it gives them a better way of accessing their own learning. So that's the reason for using Flipgrid as an audio response for this. And I'm hoping that you'll try it out and find ways of using it for yourself. So, thinking about reflection, the reflection on actually almost anything that we need to stop and reflect on, our day, our course, our content. But thinking about ourselves as instructors, the challenge is that a lot of what we do is habitual. We tend to create our courses in much the same way that we created the last one, even if we're moving from face-to-face to a hybrid or an online, we still tend to have a specific focus on our teaching and how we set things up and how we choose to interact. And often, as we know, when we're rereading things that we have written, we tend to to gloss over the errors in the writing every time we read it until someone else reads it and spots it. So our teaching can be the same way. We jump in there and we do it the same way we've always done it, and it looks fine for us. So we don't see some of those assumptions that are made in our teaching. So then our question has to be with what can we do to, using reflection rather, to make those important connections with our students so that they can connect their own personal experiences with the knowledge that they bring to the course, as well as the content that we are sharing with them. So reflection, particularly if we think about it as a metacognitive skill, because indeed it is, reflection is a way of encouraging those students to make those connections. I also, as you can probably tell from this, have a firm belief that visual connections are an important piece of it and help us to really tie things together. So then the question would be, how do we make those connections for our students? And so we're going to take a look at some of the tools that are available to us, ways of doing that. The first one, this is a quote, the thing that makes a huge difference is not how much time we spend on the task, but the attention, the focus that we are bringing to the task. And if the task that we are doing is just a rote, here's another thing that I have to do for this course, or another thing that I have to do for the end of my day, or to accomplish something. But if it's done without the focus on it, then it truly is not a key component for it. So one of the articles I found, it said that it's important for us to find ways to model focused attention. And in doing that, it's important to add other pieces of it, different ways, things that we don't normally do. So you might have them do some journaling. You might have them draw something out. As I said, I'm very much focused on the visual aspect of how we think about what we do. But even asking, particularly, of course, in a face-to-face, asking for just a moment of silence to think about the question before you respond, and then the focus. And so the focusing is an important piece of it. So when we are encouraging our students and modeling, certainly, focused attention, for us as instructors, we become more aware of what it is we are focusing on, and it helps us respond in a better way to our student needs, and certainly brings a positive approach to our classroom environment. For our students, modeling that focused attention and asking them to focus in any of the ways that work for us are that they are focusing on what they're doing, that causes them to think about the content that we want them to think about, so they're ready. It gives them attention and concentration. It can be a way of reducing anxiety and increasing their self-reflection. And one of the articles I found had some really interesting ways to illustrate and model that focused attention. One of their suggestions was, as an example, having them sign the attendance sheet with their non-dominant hand. I haven't done that as far as the attendance sheet, but I do have, in a couple of projects, have them create something with their non-dominant hand, because that gives an equal playing field for those students who don't consider themselves artistically inclined to be able to draw or write something. Another one that I liked, and I definitely would like to try, is to write somewhere at the beginning of a journal for an online course, or at the beginning of a discussion. If I were going to be distracted by something today during class, it might be and then fill in the blank, so that they are already thinking in terms of what they need to do to keep themselves focused. It's also important to take note of the class interactions and how within their smaller groups, how they interact with each other as compared to how they interact in the larger, say, in discussions. So that focus on what's going on, and of course, at the very, very basic part of keeping ourselves focused is to just take some time to breathe, breathing the inhale and the exhale. And that's where we really move into modeling focused attention for our students and encouraging them, as well as ourselves, to get the most out of that opportunity. This is an article that I just thoroughly enjoyed, and I wanted to share it with you and share some of the results. This is lessons from a reflective practice, and Dr. Tanner teaches a biology course, and she wrote this after she got an assignment to teach one of those really large sections in a face-to-face. And so she was a little bit panicked about the prospect of this large theater setting with up to 300 students in there. Now, one of the practices that she had already used up to that point with her classes of 50 or so, which still seems pretty big to me, but compared to 300, definitely not, is to have a reflective paper for them at the end of the semester. What have you learned this semester that will influence you in years and semesters to come? And she had received some really amazing responses to that. And so she then decided to follow that on her own. And the article that she wrote, while it is research-based, of course, it still is a reflection of some of the things that she learned from her students during that semester. And so the article has multiple examples for each one of these 5 lessons that she learned. And I'm just going to share a couple of them with you so that you can get some idea. And when we send out the reference list at the end, you will find the link to this article. It's available right through the library. So the first one is that she felt that students, even in that larger class, can feel a personal connection to the instructor. So in order to accomplish that personal connection, one of the things that she did was have them have name tags, name cards for them within that one of the first 2 class sessions. And the idea, of course, part of it is for her to be able to start to make connections of names and faces together. In a class that large, that could certainly be a challenge, and yet she found that helped. But she also encouraged it for the students so that they could make those connections to each other. Most students feel that those large theater-style classes are very, very impersonal, and they don't have any interaction with each other. And by the end of the semester, her students had interacted with almost everybody in the class, maybe not completely everyone, but pretty much had interacted with others. And so having that name tag with them and on their desk allowed them to interact with each other. Another thing that she did for making those personal connections was have the students create a personal information index card and have them respond to different things having to do with what they were doing in the course and how how they learn best, just various things that would be beneficial to know about the students. She also said that she, within the first 2 weeks of class, and of course, as I said, this was a very large biology class that also had labs. And so within the first 2 weeks of class, she also made it a point to take a photo of each student, provided they approved, of course. And in that time, interacted with them and had them talk about something that was unique to them. And so she began to make connections to specific students, and they were able to see that she was willing to make those connections. So the second item was that she learned from her reflections from the students is that her classroom environment, whether it's face-to-face or online, can definitely be a warm and welcoming place. So within the face-to-face class, she always made sure that there was music on as the students were coming into the classroom. She also included interaction in every week's class. So imagine, if you will, this large theater-style setting where she's inviting the students to find someone in the classroom to interact with, or maybe 2 or 3 people, and respond to something, a question or a comment or something having to do with the content for that day's class, and still be able to connect and interact. That accomplishes, of course, them connecting with each other and being an inviting atmosphere, but it also gives them the mental focus of moving into what we're going to be talking about today. She also indicates that she talks, particularly in the first couple of sessions, that she talks about the class being as the topic, in her case, biology, but it could be most anything, and talks about that rather than the first class being, let me read this syllabus to you. And so, we all recognize that college students are very capable of reading. At some point, you would emphasize those things that are important, but to talk about what we're going to be learning together rather than, here's my syllabus, you better understand it. Her third reflection or realization from the reflective practices within her class was that putting the teacher and the learner are indeed on the same team. We're not adversaries in this process. We are working together to accomplish something. And several of the things that she indicated for doing that were speaking to her students as professional colleagues. And that's such an important piece of it. Talking about the fact that what we are going to do in the class this week, this semester, as opposed to what you are going to do. She also indicated that during the semester, she asked them about how the course is supporting their learning, what can be done to help them get the most out of the course possible. Think about that from a student perspective. How many students have had teachers ask them what they can do to support their learning? And of course, that then leads right into one of the keys that the students mentioned about her was that she thinks like a student. She approaches the class from a student perspective rather than I'm the teacher and you're the student. So this idea of we're all in this together. And again, she focuses on their learning, not their grades. Grades is something that students earn, and we all know that. Learning is something that is part of the team effort, what we do together. The fourth item that she mentioned in this article was that students value the opportunity to think like, in this case, a biologist or a scientist, but that blank could be anything that you are teaching. I try to encourage students to think like an educator because that's what I teach. I want them to think of themselves from day one as educators. They may not be in a classroom yet, but they are still educators. And so to do that, in order to do that, we think about what are the habits of a scientist, a biologist, a computer engineer. What do they do? How do they get to where they need to be? And the other thing that is really important as an instructor to model and share the struggles that we have gone through to get where we are. It's not an easy task for any of us. And if your students know that you had some challenges along the way and you're willing to share those challenges and help them get through some of those challenges or others that they will have. And then again, the metacognitive piece of it, that's such a key, such an important part of thinking of like an educator or thinking like a scientist, is to literally think about our thinking, which is what metacognition is, and by doing that, it opens up, it takes us to the neuroscience perspective on it. And then her last one is being that she made a point of being explicit about the decisions and choices that she made within the class, within the assignments. So how she arrived at the need for them to do a specific assignment and how that assignment is going to benefit them in their learning. She also said that she emphasizes how this learning is going to connect to other courses that they are taking, which is really a key part because that's that transfer of information across. And she emphasizes that how the learning truly impacts them in the real world, what it is they do, how they take that information and how they're going to use it, whether they actually become scientists or, in my case, educators, but how they're taking that information out as they go into the real world. So this was a fascinating article for me, and I found it really, really encouraging. Lots and lots of tips and ideas, things that I'm going to be using, a few things that I have already done, and lots more that I'm going to add to it. So along those lines, I am going to suggest that you give some thought to your new reflective practice. And again, go back into that link to the Flipgrid and add to your post something about a new reflective tool that you are planning to use. So with that, I am going to let you know that, as I said, this is the final professional development session for this semester, and that we will be returning to our regular professional development schedule in January. Please know that in January is also the start of our new e-certification workshop, and I will make sure that the link to that goes out with this so that you can join in that workshop and join us as we talk about the best practices in building an online course, as well as the tools and the research-based concepts for being an online instructor. So I thank you for joining this today, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. I will check the Flipgrid and hope that to see your comments in there, and we'll address them. Thank you so much.